Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Meme Humanoids, Modern Myths or Real Monsters, by Lon Strickler, narrated by Charles Constant. Introduction. The Nexus of the Meme Humanoids. Throughout the world, but more frequently in North America, people have reported encounters with freakish, pale humanoid creatures that have no taxonomic classification. Most anomalous beings, or cryptids, have long been a part of regional folklore. For example, the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and the Beast of Bray Road in Walworth County, Wisconsin, are legendary cryptids associated with specific locations. During the past 2 decades, a new type of unknown humanoid cryptid has emerged. These sightings are a specific form of mythology that follows the earlier emergence of native tradition and indigenous lore. These humanoids develop from a unique mixture of urban legend that has its origins on the internet. This fictional viral monstrosity is referred to as creepypasta. So what are these creepypastas? It is a phenomenon that proliferates across the internet to such an extent that each creation has developed into its digital myth. Instead of transmitting by word of mouth, these tales spread via chain emails, online forums, and websites designed specifically for their promulgation. The most well-known creepypasta is the narrative of Slender Man, a tall, thin, faceless, black suit-clad man who preys on unsuspecting children. The Slender Man was concocted on June 10, 2009, by a Japan-based American expatriate for an internet Photoshop contest. Images depicting this imaginary entity and affiliated backstory began to circulate throughout various online forums, and in quick order, the Slender Man meme went viral. Imaginative internet users began to expand on the Slender Man myth and formulate entire stories around it. The Slender Man was transformed into a modern-day boogeyman. In a 2012 interview for BBC Radio 4, the Slender Man creator, Erik Knudsen, observed that even though people realized that Slender Man was created on an internet forum in June 2009, some still believe that he might be real. 2 years later, this bizarre reality made international headlines when 2 teenage girls from Waukesha, Wisconsin, stabbed their friend nearly to death because of their imagined illusion that their crime would earn them a place in Slender Man's presumed mansion in the woods. The Slender Man is not the only creepypasta humanoid to break out from the internet and unfold itself in the material world. Another virtual creation that makes its appearance known is a humanoid referred to as the Rake. The Rake myth emerged in 2005 when an anonymous poster on the image board website 4chan decided to create a contemporary monster. The poster described their brainchild as humanoid, about 6 feet tall when standing, but usually crouches and walks on all fours. It has very pale skin. The face is blank, as in no nose and no mouth. However, it has 3 solid green eyes, one in the middle of its forehead, and the other 2 on either side of its head, towards the back. When it attacks, a mouth opens as if a hinged skull that opens at the chin, reveals many tiny but dull teeth. This creature, which is believed to have been inspired by the so-called crawlers from the 2005 horror film The Descent, evolved throughout the 4chan thread. The monstrous humanoid gradually transformed into a gaunt, naked, pale-skinned, human-like creature that crawls on 4 long, spindly limbs. This entity was thus dubbed the Rake. It would be several years before the concept of the Rake gained traction in the creepypasta community. In December 2008, user posts featuring this made-up Rake humanoid appeared on the Russian social networking site LiveJournal. In April 2009, the Rake humanoid returned to 4chan, its birthplace. In a matter of a few months, the Rake made its way onto somethingawful.com, where it served as an inspiration for Erik Knudsen's Slender Man. By 2010, the legend of the Rake was quickly spreading throughout the internet, pervading all manner of creepypasta websites, evolving into fan art and creative fiction, which added intensity and color to its mythos. In 2012, an incredible phenomenon began to occur. Internet users, in earnest, began reporting frightening encounters with emaciated, pale, hairless humanoids that, for the most part, crawled on all fours. Internet users attempted to equate these entities with characters of Native American mythology, oblivious to the fact that the humanoids in these encounters bore a resemblance to the fictional Rake. Many witnesses suggested that they were skinwalkers, medicine men or witches of traditional Navajo lore who possessed the ability to transform into animals. Others proposed that these emaciated humanoids were manifestations of the Wendigo, a malevolent cannibalistic spirit of Cree and Algonquin legend. Others still began to invent new names for these creatures, such as Fleshgaits and Crawlers, the latter evoking the 2005 movie entities that likely helped to inspire the Rake originally. The vast number of reliable witnesses who claim to have seen these humanoids, coupled with the fact that many of these witnesses appear to be ignorant of the urban legends, suggests two interesting possibilities. Namely, that the creator of the Rake meme unconsciously contrived an entity that previously existed, or that the human imagination or subconscious continuously materializes these beings into reality. This phenomenon is known as thought form or tulpa manifestation. If this is the case, then one must ask, what came first, the monster or the myth? The term thought form describes the concept of an entity created directly and exclusively by the mind, whether unconsciously or consciously. These entities appear to develop a life of their own, a distinct being that is perceptible to other people. The belief in thought forms is the basis of several concepts throughout history, specifically the tulpa in Tibetan tradition, the puka in Germanic and Celtic cultures, and the jinn in Arabic belief. Early records of Western explorers experienced an embodied form of consciousness as benign beings that accompanied them and, in some cases, befriend them. More recently, poltergeist manifestations have been attributed to a thought form. It does seem that consciousness, as the result of various experiments and trials, can partition and extend itself beyond the human mind. This provides a context for understanding reported psychokinetic phenomena, notably apparitional appearances, and additional unexplained manifestations. The humanoid encounters and sightings that are detailed in this book offer varied glimpses into the phenomenon. Ask yourself, are these humanoids actually corporeal beings that are manifested by the human mind and perceivable by others? Or are we witnessing the nexus of an unknown and monstrous species of humanoid? 1. Gray aliens, walkers, and crawlers. During the years following World War II, there was an increase of unidentified flying object sightings and, eventually, the advent of alien beings who were supposedly piloting these otherworldly craft. As time went on, these beings were designated as gray aliens or simply grays. The origins of the grays may go back to an earlier time. In the 1890s, a few novels began to describe encounters with small gray-skinned alien races with oversized balloon-shaped heads. Author H.G. Wells later predicted humanity's future appearance as evolved humanoids with diminished mouths and noses, no hair, and with large heads. The Morlocks and the Eloi were examples of Wells' successor species to humanity. The perceived existence of these beings would occasionally make their way into our culture as having freakishly large heads in proportion to their bodies. These descriptions included a hairless body and no noticeable outer ears or noses, sometimes with small orifices for ears, nostrils, and mouths. In drawings, grays were usually shown with very large, opaque black eyes. They were frequently described as shorter than average adult humans. The grays were later linked to the alleged crash landing of possibly more than one alien craft in the desert surrounding Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. A few publications contained statements from individuals who claimed to have seen U.S. military personnel in the possession of unusually shaped, bald, child-sized humanoids. As time progressed, the descriptions of these humanoids would vary a bit, but existence theories have continued to evolve, especially in those literary accounts that described close encounters and possibly human abduction. It's not my intent to argue the theories pertaining to the gray aliens or any other supposed extraterrestrial faction. I simply want to establish a base as to how the gray and or pale humanoids have been depicted in the past. There is one account that I believe serves as a good starting point for the advent of the modern-era humanoids. The Dover Demon is a small humanoid reportedly observed in Dover, Massachusetts. It was the subject of a profound panic during the 1970s, when multiple witnesses came forward with their sightings. The Dover Demon is described as looking sort of like a gray alien, except that it has skin of a rosy orange instead of opaque gray. The Dover Demon has a large head on a demure, spindly body. It can be bipedal, but it often moves as a quadruped and switches back and forth between the two modes of locomotion. It has eyes that seem to glow, alternating between orange and green. The body appears to be nude without any covering. It seems that sightings only occur during a brief period, though the number of sightings in recent years have been scattered at best. The initial sighting was reported to be at 10:32 p.m. on April 21, 1977, as three 17-year-olds, Bill Bartlett, Mike Mazoka, and Andy Brody, were traveling north on Farm Street. Bartlett, the driver of the Volkswagen, observes something creeping along a low wall of loose stones on the left side of the road. At first, he believes the figure is a dog or a cat, until his headlights shine on it. He then realizes that he's looking at an entity that he has never seen before. The figure slowly turns its head and stares into the light. The two large, circular, lidless eyes shine brightly like two orange marbles. Its watermelon-shaped head, resting at the top of a thin neck, is the size of the rest of its body. Except for its oversized head, the creature is extremely thin, with long, spindly arms and legs, and large hands and feet. The skin is hairless and peach-colored, and appears to have a rough texture. Like wet sandpaper, Bartlett subsequently describes the skin of the being. Standing no more than 3.5 to 4 feet in height, the figure is shaped like a baby's body with long arms and legs. It had been making its way along the wall, its long fingers curling around the rocks, when the car lights captured and surprised it. Unfortunately, neither of Bartlett's companions observes the unusual being. The sighting lasts only a few seconds, and before Bartlett can speak, the car travels past the scene. Bartlett drops his friends off and quickly drives home. Visibly upset, he walks through the door. His demeanor raises an alarm from his father, who inquires further. Bartlett relates the story and later sketches what he's seen. Later that same night, at around midnight, 15-year-old John Baxter leaves his girlfriend Kathy Cronin's house at the south end of Miller High Road. Baxter starts walking up the street on his way home. Half an hour later, after he has walked about a mile, he observes someone approaching him. Because the figure is short, Baxter assumes it's an acquaintance of his, M.G. Bouchard, who lives on the street. John calls out, and there's no response. Baxter and the figure continue to approach each other until finally the latter stops. Baxter then halts as well and asks, "Who is that?" He can only see a shadowy form. Baxter takes one step forward, and the figure scurries off to the left, running down a shallow wooded gully and up the opposite bank. As the figure runs, Baxter hears its footsteps on the dry leaves. He follows the figure down the slope, then stops and looks across the gully. There he sees the creature standing in silhouette, about 30 feet away, its feet molded around the top of a rock several feet from a tree. The creature's body reminds Baxter of a monkey's, except for its dark figure-8-shaped head. Its two bright eyes are looking straight at Baxter, who after a few moments begins to feel uneasy. Realizing he has never seen such a being before, and fearing what it might do next, he backs carefully up the slope. He then walks very fast down the road to the intersection at Farm Street. There, a couple passing in a car pick him up and drive him home. Several years later, a reliable witness in Barnstable Village on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, states that he had a similar encounter in 1977. He said that at the time he was working at a restaurant in Yarmouth Port, the next town over. He was giving a fellow employee a ride home when they detoured to a beach parking lot to drink a beer after work. It was early summer, around 9:30 at night. The road was located north of Route 6A, Scudder Lane, and as they were heading back to the main road, they saw something very similar to what is being described as the Dover Demon. It crossed the road in front of them, causing the witness to suddenly apply the brakes to avoid a collision. Although they only saw it for a few seconds in the headlights, it did not attempt to scurry away like a wild animal. In fact, the being slowly and deliberately continued across the road, focusing its stare at the witnesses in the car. The driver described it as 3 to 4 feet in height, even though it was walking on all fours. It had a large head in relationship to its body, and the eyes were very prominent, since they were large and glowing from the reflection of the headlights. He states that they were dumbfounded and were at a loss to identify what they had just seen. It seemed ape-like because of its stature, but the eyes did not resemble any animal they had ever seen. They only mentioned the encounter to a few friends and family, and never reported the incident to any authorities. The driver said that he knows what he saw was real, and perhaps he should have documented it a little more thoroughly. In late summer 2012, I began to receive reports concerning a bizarre entity that witnesses had encountered in various locations within California's Sierra Nevada mountains. As time went on, and after I had talked to a few local park rangers, it became evident that a pale white humanoid was making itself known. The initial account I received on August 28, 2012, was, I believe, the nexus for the Penelope sightings. Sir, my brother referred your email address to me. He thought you may have an answer to what I saw this past July while camping in the Sierra Nevada mountains near Tioga Lake, California. My teenage son and I were camping in our RV. There were other campers in the area, but not very close to us. On the third night of our trip, we encountered something that neither of us can explain. This is bear country, and I know that there have been Bigfoot reports over the years. But what we saw was neither, as far as we can tell. We secured all the food and other supplies in the RV and were getting ready to go to bed. It was about 12:30 a.m. My son fell asleep quickly while I was getting a few things ready as we were going to leave this location later in the morning. I was looking at a map when I started to hear high-pitched screams. At first I thought it was a coyote, but it was a single scream and sounded more human, like a woman's scream. I opened the RV door and stood silent in the doorway. Once again the high-pitched scream started. This time it woke my son. We both stood at the door as the screams continued from the direction of the mountain. After about 10 minutes the screams stopped, so we both went to bed. Something startled me while I was sleeping because I woke in a panic. I looked at my watch. It was 2:40 a.m. Then suddenly that same high-pitched scream erupted outside of the RV. As it started, my son jumped out of his rack and fell to the floor. I grabbed my .44 just in case. As we looked out through the windshield, the moonlight was bright enough to illuminate a tall, thin creature with light-colored skin. My son yelled, "Zombie!" It did look like a female human form, but the face and the rest of the body looked horrible. It reminded me of an old witch. It had no clothes, a deformed face, long, light-colored hair, long arms and legs. I figured it stood almost 7 feet. It was walking away from the RV toward the lake. I had seen enough. I made sure everything was ready to go and drove out of there ASAP. We ended up near Mono Lake. A few days later, I was able to talk to a ranger as he walked through the camping area. He was an older guy and quite engaging. I described what we witnessed. My son also verified what we had seen. The ranger got a serious look on his face and said that over the years, something similar had been reported a few times. He said that they called it Penelope, but he didn't know why it had gotten that name. That's all he knew. When I got home, I searched the internet, but no information was available. My brother gave me your email address and said that you may have an idea of what it was. I'd appreciate your help. L.R. I later talked to the witness, but there wasn't much more information that he could provide, other than he thought that he'd observed the humanoid attempt to crawl as it moved away from him and his son. I looked for Penelope online. There was one small reference, but little detail. I contacted Inyo National Forest for information. They directed me to the Mono Lake Ranger Station. I was able to talk to a ranger who confirmed that there were a few very odd sightings in the Sierra Nevada range and that one of these beings was dubbed Penelope, but he was unaware of how or why the name was given. I sent out a few inquiries to other ranger stations. A few days later, I received a short email from a folklore writer in Reno, Nevada, who stated that Penelope was supposedly a woman who became lost in the Sierra Nevada mountains several years ago and eventually became a flesh-eating monster. Okay. Seems like we're getting into the urban legend column on this one. Well, anyway, I continued to make inquiries. Then, several months later, as dumb luck has it, I saw a reference to Penelope in a book I had recently received titled Monster Spotter's Guide to North America. The brief description is comparable to the information that I received from the folklore writer, with a few more gruesome details. It seems Penelope disembowels her victims before feasting on the remains. As well, she is supposedly responsible for a few unexplained deaths in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Other than that, I had no idea what L.R. and his son witnessed. On September 30th, 2013, I received another email report about another pale humanoid sighting in the Sierra Nevada range. I was searching for references in the Sierra Nevadas, and I came across a story on your page about a creature named Penelope. The entire encounter and creature described by the L.R. person who sent the original email was something my entire family and myself had witnessed many years ago. We were camping near Convict Lake, California, but further back in the woods. There were 3 other groups of campers in the campground, and it was late spring. On our second night there, around 1 a.m., just outside my old Nissan/Datsun 6-pack camper, my father, mother, and I heard a very loud scream. Other people in the camp heard it as well, because when I looked out the window, I saw lights in all the tents turn on. Following the scream, a second scream came from the hill across the stream. There were 2 of these creatures. A minute or 2 went by, and then again, from the same location, we heard another loud, blood-curdling scream. It then proceeded to begin running in the direction of the creature across the stream. It must have been large because my dad is 6 foot 4 inches, 300 pounds, and could not make the same loud thuds this creature made when running. We only got a look at part of it as it emerged from the brush when crossing the stream. It was a whitish blur, at least that's what we saw. Even though several campers had weapons, we left right then and there. This was back in 1986. I don't believe in Bigfoot, aliens, etc., but whatever this was, it was real, and it was very large. I will never go camping without at least a shotgun since that incident. Thanks, M. When I first read this account, I thought that this creature was probably a blonde-colored Bigfoot, but when I later talked to the witness, he stated that he believed that it was hairless. He also stated that the screams were high-pitched and shrill. I was later contacted by an employee at the Convict Lake Resort who concurred that other campers had reported similar sightings of large, ghostly, pale entities that moved swiftly through the forest while making hideous, ear-piercing screams. Were these Penelope-like humanoids? Then, in January 2016, I received the following report. Hello, Lon. I have been searching for months to find answers to what it is my wife and I saw near Labor Day 2014 while camping in the eastern Sierras in the Mono Village area. Most websites are just so outlandish and full of people that want to believe in monsters or UFOs, it just becomes frustrating that any hope of putting together the puzzle and maybe learning something from these rare experiences would be lost. I read the reported sighting of the man and his son seeing a tall, skinny, witch-looking thing outside his RV in the same region. Also, I was very interested in an article that discussed the Bigfoot problem and how people might be seeing ghosts of animals from the past. Is this why it's so hard to gather evidence? Maybe they materialized and dematerialized, and we are just lucky to be present. This seems like a legitimate explanation to me, because the creature I saw running by the road, if living, breathing, and hunting in our physical world, would send all the people that live in Mono County back to the city once reports came of its appearance. I have been coming to the same area to camp and fish for over 30 years. The Twin Lakes Resort in Bridgeport, California, right on the California-Nevada border, about an hour north of Mono Lake. High elevation, tons of wildlife, and great fishing. The one-way road up to the Twin Lakes ends at the base of the huge mountain range, north side of Yosemite. My parents brought me when I was 5, and now I bring them and my family every year, so I am very familiar with the wildlife. On many occasions had up-close experiences with many of its inhabitants. For instance, one time a bear was spooked and backed up into my tent, sending me flying over the other 2 in my tent. I've seen some stuff. My family loves to fish, mostly catch and release. My favorite pastime is hiking and bird/animal watching. I have developed a keen eye for locating and identifying all types of wildlife. To give you an example of what I have personally seen in this valley, mountain lion, Sierra moose, bald eagle, golden eagle nesting, mountain goats, osprey, king snake. The list goes on. The point I'm trying to make is I've seen every kind of animal in this wilderness, and I have a great knowledge of every other species of animal all over the world. Nature and wildlife have been a lifelong interest of mine and have been the subject of much of my art since I was a child. Knowing the body parts and how they move together has been essential to understanding as an artist. Okay, now to the sighting. My wife, stepson, and I were headed to the creek for some daybreak fishing. We left before dawn to get the car parked and walk to the creek. The time must have been close to 5:30 a.m., and it was still very dark and slight fog. This trip, which is about a quarter mile from the cabin to the creek, it is always full of nocturnal animals headed home after raiding the local campgrounds. So mule deer, black bear, and huge jackrabbits crossing the road is no surprise. Like I have done 100 times before, keep an eye out, slow down, hit the high beams to illuminate the beasts with eyes reflecting my car lights. This time my lights caught something crossing the road that did not have reflective nocturnal eyes, so I slowed down immediately to about 20 miles per hour, and tried my best to identify what it was. I was having trouble doing so since the thing was moving very low to the ground. Its belly is just inches from touching the ground. It appeared very pale or white, so I think goat or sheep. I immediately remembered decades ago there had been sheep herders on the side of the hill, but they had been gone for many years. Well, when my high beams hit this thing, it turned its long neck and glared at us, and almost shook its head as if it didn't want to be seen at all. At first sight, it was crossing the street almost diagonally, headed our way, then along the side of the road in our direction. Now, my wife had seen it from the start, but I needed extra time so that I could identify it and give her an explanation of what type of animal it was. I asked her, "What is that?" I just wanted to make sure she was seeing and observing the same thing I was. Now, the first odd thing that I couldn't understand, besides the way it was crawling so low to the ground, is, unlike a hunting cat, the legs were all wrong. Its knees seemed to be backward, but it was running on them. My thought was that it was an escaped sheep or goat that had broken knees, and it was running for its life because it was moving fast. As it came closer and closer towards us, I could hardly take my eyes off its freaky legs. I still lay awake at night, puzzled by how they were working. I've not seen any mammal move this way. The closest thing would be a crab or insect. The front and back legs moved together in unison. There was no bouncing, swaying, galloping, or jumping like that of a mammal. This creature's torso, which was about 4 feet long, stayed straight, low to the ground as its legs/arms did all the work. To me, it looked like a puppet with a marionette moving it along.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?